Ladies and gentlemen, it is not easy to turn back the clock to retrieve a few moments in time long faded from our memories, a time when there were grave doubts whether we would ever see a blue and white flag of a Jewish state flying amongst the community of nations. Many of the stories of the gallant, brave men and women of those times have already been told. But tonight, we want to tell one that has eluded us, mostly because of the modesty of the man whose story it is. The time is May 1948. For the first time in 2,000 years, David Ben-Gurion informs the world that a Jewish state has been declared in Palestine. But before any celebration gets underway, the Jewish state's Arab neighbors declare war upon her, rejecting the United Nations call for a partition of Palestine into two separate states. As Ben-Gurion begins speaking, a Jewish agency representative in Washington, D.C., rushes a letter to the White House seeking formal recognition for the new state. While listening to Ben-Gurion's radio address naming the state of Israel, the Jewish agency representative again rushes to the White House gate just in time to intercept the letter and for the first time write the name of the country for which it seeks recognition. Ben-Gurion, after he finished his address, quickly realizes that the fate of the Jewish state may be sealed because she has no air force, few pilots, practically no planes, except for a few old German Messerschmitts still in crates, which were brought from Czechoslovakia and were now hurriedly being repainted blue and white, covering the Nazi insignias with the Star of David. In addition, the Prime Minister knows that the lives of hundreds of thousands of Jews living in Arab countries now hang in the balance, and that every day that passes increases the risk of their possible survival. The question is, can an attempt be made to rescue them? But where do you get the pilots capable of undertaking such dangerous missions, to land in pitch dark, where there are no proper airports and no facilities for servicing them, with uncertain instruments and deprived of radio guidance, and where any forced landing anywhere would mean certain disaster for all the passengers? Thus was born the incredible story of Robert F. Maguire, Jr., an Irishman and crack pilot who was flying transport missions for General MacArthur in the Far East, and at the end of the war, flew missions that transported Jewish refugees from as far away as China. Maguire recognized the great tragedy that befell the Jewish people during the Holocaust and decided that he would do all he could to help the fledgling young Jewish state. Within a matter of months, at the behest of the Jewish Joint Distribution Committee, he became the chief pilot for one of the greatest rescue missions ever undertaken, the rescue of 50,000 Jews of Yemen who desperately wanted to go to the new Jewish state, but who had no possible way of realizing their dreams. On December 15th, 1948, an American-built C-54 full of Jewish orphans from Yemen flew through the war zone to make the 1,600-mile journey to Israel, thus beginning one of the greatest rescue missions, Operation Magic Carpet. Each time, as those planes carrying a new group of Jews from Yemen reached Israeli airspace, the Jews on the plane began to cry and sing. Meanwhile, almost at the same time as this was taking place in Berlin, Maguire's father, Robert F. Maguire Sr., who had been appointed by President Truman to the Nuremberg Nazi war crimes trials as a judge, was sitting in judgment of those who had committed history's greatest crime, the Holocaust. The judges at Nuremberg had only recently discovered new documents about the secret protocol of the Wannsee Conference, the Nazi plan to destroy all of Europe's Jews. While Maguire's father was studying the Nazi documents detailing destruction of the Jewish people, his son was sitting in the cockpit, risking his life every day in a heroic attempt to save the Jews of Yemen. This is only the beginning of this story. Please direct your attention to the screen.
They that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings of eagles, and they shall run and not be weary.
With those words from the Bible, American transport pilot Bob Maguire convinced thousands of Yemenite Jews to start a journey of freedom to the newly established state of Israel. But how does an Oregon-born Irish Catholic end up at the helm of a rescue effort to save thousands of Jews from a Middle Eastern country that many people at the time never heard of? Bob Maguire's career as a transport pilot started during World War II. His dream of flying fighters had to be set aside because of his advanced age, 28 years.
If you were over to 27, you could not fight combat. You could not get your ticket to fly combat. They just said you're too old, it would be a waste of time training you. So I got all the training I could I got into every other branch of flying that I could, which included instructing and the whole damn thing.
In the final months of the war, Maguire was transferred to the Philippines to prepare for the work of bringing troops back home and reuniting families. When he finished his military service in 1946, he joined Alaska Airlines. But rather than flying in Alaska, the fledgling airline had contracted with the American Jewish Joint Distribution Committee to transport Jewish refugees in Europe to new homes elsewhere. In one of his first flights, Maguire flew supplies to Frankfurt, West Germany, which others then airlifted into Berlin during the blockade of 1948. From there, he flew to Rome to pick up Jewish survivors of Buchenwald and Auschwitz and transported them to Australia, where they had found new homes. For most Jewish refugees, however, the dream in 1948 was to make their way to the newly independent state of Israel. Several thousand arrived on Alaska Airlines C-54s, piloted by Bob Maguire, including one plane load from Tientsin, China.
But 178 people were stuck in Tientsin and couldn't get out. I chartered a ship, an old four-stacker, because Chinese are superstitious about smokestacks. So I chartered an old four-stack steamer and went up to Tientsin and picked up 179 guys who'd been stuck there. These were great people. They were scholars. Tientsin had become a center of scholarship in the years before the war, I guess.
During the flight from China to Israel, one of the passengers came into the cockpit to speak to Maguire.
He said, "Could you tell me the instant at which the airplane crosses the border into Israel? Could you tell me?" I said, "Of course." So I let him know, and the whole 179 passengers, which were the last ones from Tientsin, sang Hatikva and the great Jewish songs, and it was probably as touching a thing as I've ever been through in my life. Just absolutely wonderful. Just, I can't even tell you.
Israel's independence led to anti-Jewish decrees, riots, and murders throughout the Arab world. Especially threatened were Yemen's 45,000 Jews. A massive rescue effort was mounted called Operation Magic Carpet. In the center of it all was Bob Maguire. The flights began in late December 1949 and oftentimes flew hundreds of people around the clock from the port of Aden to Israel. One of the organizers of Operation Magic Carpet was the future Prime Minister, Golda Meir.
Oh, Golda was a ball. She was something else again. One time, they couldn't get any communications going between the people who were really outside of control of Israel. So she became a spy. And Golda, a school teacher from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, went over there and got all mixed up in this. Goldie was the one who took on the whatever you want to call it, the spy job of getting everything organized so that she was wonderful, great help.
Golda Meir wasn't the only one taking great risks. Bob Maguire was in danger with almost every flight he took. One day in particular, his C-54 ran out of gas and he was forced to land in Port Sudan, Egypt.
I've now got a load of Jews who are at war with the people in Port Sudan, and here I'm sitting with a look, and I've got to get gas. So I said, gas up the airplane. Well, aren't you running back and forth between Israel? Well, yes, but today I'm not doing that. Damn lie. And I said, could you gas me up? No, he said, we have to check it out through the State Department. I said, oh Christ, we'll be here for a month to myself. So I said, I'd be glad to do it, but we have smallpox on board. And we have to get people out right now. Get your health authorities out here. They've got to check the smallpox thing and shut down the airline and do everything. If you don't do that, you're responsible for a smallpox epidemic. And they fell for it. And so we got our fuel and got our passengers back on board and fed them and went on our way rejoicing.
Even though Bob Maguire's C-54s were flying the Jews of Yemen to safety in Israel, many of the passengers, especially the elderly, were reluctant to board the planes. Most had never seen an airplane before. So how did he convince them that it was safe to get on?
We found out the chapter in the Old Testament said, "Ye shall return to Israel on wings of eagles." Well, I said, well, these are the wings of eagles. This is how you're going to get home. Oh, is that so? I said, absolutely. Look at the Bible.
From late 1940 until early 1951, Bob Maguire and a number of other former Air Force pilots flew Yemenite Jews from the port of Aden to Israel, as well as other Jews from Arab countries in peril. Overall, he and his colleagues ferried between 40 to 50,000 Jews. It was not unusual for Maguire to be flying 10 out of 24 hours a day, every day. For his role in helping Jews escape the Arab world, Egyptian authorities had a 25,000-pound bounty on him, dead or alive. Commenting on Bob Maguire's deeds, Israel's new Prime Minister, David Ben-Gurion, called him the Irish Moses. But if you tell the 94-year-old Maguire today that he did something extraordinary, he'll disagree with you.
That this was my job in life, to get that goddamn thing going and stick with it and make it happen and get the movement of Jews to Israel off its butt and get things moving. It was a great joy, which nobody, I don't think I've ever said it until this minute. It was a tremendous joy to get new lives for all those people, because I got new lives for a hell of a lot of people, and I mean new lives. And it was a tremendous sense of satisfaction and joy to be able to do it, to be privileged to do it.
They that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings of eagles, and they shall run and not be weary.
Ladies and gentlemen, first, it is my honor to present the Medal of Valor of the Simon Wiesenthal Center to you. But before presenting it to you, I have a surprise. In the audience, you know, it's easy to say that somebody flew missions that saved people. Where are the people? The people are here tonight. There are 2 tables of Jews from Yemen. One of them, 2 were on the flights. One was a pilot on the flights, and one was born on one of those flights. Ladies and gentlemen, on the screens you'll see the representative of the great Jewish community of Yemen, and wherever they live, anywhere in the world, they wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the efforts of Bob Maguire. They would never have made it out of Yemen.